I spent many years, just kind of believing that I was my mind. I realized once I started the meditation process that I'd really not had a conscious thought my entire life. I was just going through the motions.
If you wake up every morning and you do the same thing as you did the day before, over time your body's going to be on autopilot. And it's going to drag you into a predictable future based on what you did in the past. And many people lose their free will to a bunch of programs. When you're in the program, you're unconscious, right? So the moment you become conscious of that thought, you're no longer the thought. You're observing the thought, and you begin to objectify your subjective self. You start pulling out of the unconscious program, and consciousness, awareness is the first step to do that. So going from one state of mind and body to another state of mind and body, you gotta cross a river. And the hardest part about change is not making the same choice as you did the day before. Now, once people understand that they're gonna be uncomfortable, then the question is, what thoughts do you want to fire and wire in your brain? What behaviors will you demonstrate in one day? And the act of closing your eyes and rehearsing who you're going to be when you open your eyes begins to install neurological hardware in your brain to look like you've already done it. Now the brain, which is typically a record of the past, now becomes a map to the future. And if you keep doing it, the hardware begins to become a software program, and you start behaving differently. And then if you can teach your body emotionally what the future will feel like, that means then you're not going to wait for your wealth to feel abundant, or your success to feel empowered, or your new relationship to feel love. In fact, the moment you start feeling abundant, you're generating wealth. The moment you start embracing empowerment, you're stepping towards your success. The moment you're in love with yourself and you're in love with life, you start creating equals in your life. Now that's causing an effect in your life. So many people, they already know how to do this, but they usually wait for the worst thing to happen in their life before they get the wake-up call.
And that's actually my story. I spent many years, just kind of believing that I was my mind, and just I realized once I started the meditation process that I'd really not had a conscious thought my entire life. I was just going through the motions. And in the environment that I came from, there's a lot of unhealthy habits. And so I found myself in a place where I broke my hip at track practice, just running a time trial, 200-meter time trial. And I was 15 years old. Nobody stopped to ask, how did a 15-year-old kid break his hip from running? It sounds very unusual. But it wasn't until about 4 years later, things got so bad that I started having difficulty walking. And come to find out I had degenerative bone disease, degenerative disc disease, 2 herniated discs just from living, right? And so my doctors told me I had the spine of an 8-year-old man. And so very similar to your story, I saw 4 physicians, and they recommended the same thing: just be careful, wear a back brace, potential surgery. But after all of those no's, I had to say yes to myself at a point, and I had to change the way that I was thinking. And for me, a big lead-in was through food. And so all of these mediums really do matter. And so for all of us, and this is what I want to ask you about, we think that when we want to get this new result, that we can just do it. We can just try. But what you're saying is you got to be ready, because a lot of hell's going to break loose once you try to change who you are, if you're not prepared by changing what you're thinking first.
Yeah, we've actually studied this on functional scans. Many times, when we're looking at a person's brain in real time when they're going through some type of change or transformation, you see this massive amount of disorderliness going on in the brain. Like the person is really losing their mind. All the circuitry is coming unglued. There's all this cognitive dissonance taking place. That's the moment they want to quit. That's the moment they want to give up. That's the moment they don't believe in anything. They believe in themselves. That is the prime moment where change takes place right there, because that's the end. They're on the edge there. So it's important for people to understand that if you're going about living every single day in the familiar life that you're living in, and you don't have a vision of the future, then you'll continue to live in routine. And if you wake up every morning and you do the same thing as you did the day before, over time your body's going to be on autopilot, and it's going to drag you into a predictable future based on what you did in the past. And many people lose their free will to a bunch of programs. So then when you sit down and you become conscious of your unconscious thoughts, when you're in the program, you're unconscious, right? So the moment you become conscious of that thought, you're no longer the thought. You're observing the thought, and you begin to objectify your subjective self. You start pulling out of the unconscious program, and consciousness, awareness is the first step to do that. And so many people don't want to light a match in a dark place because all of a sudden, when they decide to be defined by a vision of the future, they're stepping out of the known. You're going to hear, I can't. It's too hard. It's not going to work. What about this? And those are the thoughts that are standing in the way between that person and that vision. And it has to come up. And if a person has been in the habit of unconsciously complaining and making excuses and feeling sorry for themselves and judging other people, that's their habit. The moment they become conscious of it, now they're out of the bleachers and they're on the field, right? Because now you have to not let that thought slip by your awareness unnoticed. And then if you're living in guilt or suffering or pain or unhappiness, but you live that way every day and it just feels like you, and all of a sudden you become aware, oh my God, I've been guilty for the last 10 years. I didn't even know it. It just felt like me. You're starting to separate yourself from your biology. And so you have to go through the process of unlearning before you relearn. And that 95% of who we are, that is what's stopping us from stepping into a new future. So then if people then are waking up every single day, think about this, the brain is a record of the past. If you wake up every morning and you start thinking about your problems, and your problems are just memories that are etched in your brain that are connected to certain people and problems and certain objects and things in certain times and places, the moment you start remembering your problems, you're thinking in the past, right? Yeah. And if every one of those problems has an emotion associated with it, and you start feeling bad or unhappy, now your body's in the past. So thoughts are the language of the brain, and feelings are the language of your body, and how you think and how you feel creates your state of being. So most people then, they start their day in the familiar past. Then they get up and they run through a routine series of behaviors, and their body's now habituated on autopilot into a predictable future. That's the known. So the familiar past, the predictable future are both the known. There's only one place where the unknown exists, and that's the present moment. So then when you're creative, you got to be present. You got to pay attention to be creative, and that defies or goes against the programming. And so then there has to be some type of waging of intention that's greater than those programs. And most people, they get uncomfortable. They'd rather just get on their cell phone or, turn on the TV and watch a football game or distract themselves from that feeling. But when people really make up their mind to change, they have to come up against those feelings, those habits, those hardwired attitudes. And it takes a great act of will. But when we do it, the side effect is we see changes not only in our health, but in our lives as well. And then we say, wow, that really worked. And now we're the example of truth. That's what makes it so cool.
Yeah. So the goal is to lose our minds.
You literally have to lose your
so
mind
funny.
and create a new one.
I've never thought about it like that. And that's powerful. I mean, and also it would seem like that from the outside world as well. Your friends, family, when you're working on changing who you are, obviously, it's one of the things people say, like you're losing your mind.
Yeah.
And that's the goal.
That's as you should take it as a compliment. You should tell them I'm losing the mind that I need to lose.
Yeah. Love that.
Because you don't leave everything.
Yeah.
You have certain skills, certain good habits, certain ways that you execute, and you think you want to take that into your future.
Yeah.
But don't take your lack or your insecurity. Don't take your pain or your misery. That stays. Yeah. And if you can't think greater than how you feel in your life, then you're thinking in the past, and your life will stay the same. So teaching people how to break out of the biology of their hardwired programs, the biology of the conditioning emotionally of their body, the biology of their habituations is a process that requires a great amount of energy and awareness. But people are doing it, and they're doing it really successfully.
Yeah. So I love that analogy of lighting a match in a dark place. And when you said it, I thought about the Lord of the Rings, like Gandalf. He has a staff, and there's all this darkness, and he lights it, and there's unpleasant things around them, right? Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like creating this opportunity to see the stuff that's kind of hidden in our minds. And so when I started the process of meditation, and I've done shows just talking about the science behind meditation, the benefits, just the stuff in the data, in the clinical evidence, it's phenomenal. But what I don't talk about often is that it's not necessarily easy. because like I kind of had to learn how to live my life again after I was awake to the fact that I was awake in a sense. And just kind of pointing back to when we light that and we see some of these negative qualities, for example, like it wasn't the fact that all these bad things were happening around me, it was me. Like I had these negative perceptions about life. I was living my life, like you talk about these patterns of personality traits. I believed that life was struggle. Like everything had to be hard. Like I couldn't just graduate from high school. I had to get kicked out of high school in order to graduate. I couldn't just graduate from college. I had to get kicked out first. I couldn't just have the things I wanted. I had to go through all of this struggle. And so I would manifest more of that. And like that was a thing that switched for me. I started to think differently that, you know what, if I fall in love with this process, like even the challenges are fun now.
Yeah. That's how powerful we are. You could actually, like the story we tell ourselves is how we perceive the world. And so then when we create the difficulties in our life, it reaffirms the belief that life is hard, that it's really someone out there that's doing it to us, that it's a circumstance in the past that created this. Okay, let's take away the person that did it. Let's shoot him to the moon. Let's erase your past. Now, what are you going to do now? You still got to do something, right? You're still alive. And I say we already know how to do this. We already know how to do this. We're wired to be creators. We're wired to do this. The thing that stops us, for the most part, in doing it is really the hormones of stress, because living in stress constantly is living in survival, and living in survival is living in emergency. In an emergency, it's not a time to create. In an emergency, it's not a time to open your heart. It's not a time to learn. It's not even a time to sit still. So most people then that are living in stress and living in survival, they can't believe in a future yet because it's not a time to create. So getting people to that point where they make up their mind, and they make up their mind enough to begin to think, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be something else. That awakening process typically happens when people reach their lowest denominator. They hit rock bottom, because then they can see themselves through the eyes of somebody else. You feel so altered, you're not returning any texts. You feel so altered, you don't want to go to dinner with your buddies. You feel so altered, you don't want to watch your favorite TV show. You're just disconnected. And that's when you start observing yourself. But my message is, why wait for that? I mean, you can learn and change in pain and suffering, or you can learn and change in joy and inspiration. If you're waking up every morning being defined by a vision of the future instead of the memories of the past, and you get up and you're inspired from an elevated self now instead of a limited self, you could observe the old self from an elevated state instead of that diminished state. And people are doing that. So they are aware of those thoughts. And yes, it takes effort. And if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. But just because you have a thought doesn't necessarily mean it's true. And when you start looking and observing those thoughts, I think you are like Gandalf, because Gandalf also said, you may not pass, when he meant like that kind of severity when it comes to how we make up our mind about things. That's the kind of energy or intention that begins to create the biggest volume of change in our life. And I've interviewed thousands of people in our work that have healed from really serious health conditions. And I would say about 90% of them, when I ask them, so what happened? The first thing they say all the time is, I just made up my mind. I just made up my mind I was going to do this. Yeah. And they made a decision with such firm intention that the amplitude of that decision carried a level of energy that was greater than the hardwired programs in their brain and the emotional conditioning in their body. And the choice that they made caused their body to respond to a new mind. In fact, the choice they made became a moment that they would never forget. It was an event. And the stronger the emotion they felt, the more they paid attention to the choice. And in a sense, they were remembering their future. And the body emotionally was getting a sampling, a taste of the future. And they're aligned to that future. And that's when the body's healing began. That's when the miracle started, right in that moment. That's how powerful we really are. Now, what if you did that every day? What if you made up your mind every single day you weren't going to get up from your meditation until you were that person you wanted to be? Game on now. Because you'd have to do battle with all the things that are not consistent with it. And that's exactly how our brain works. So then, if you want to be wealthy, you can't feel lack. You want to be a master, you can't judge your coworker. You want to be like somebody great in history, then you better execute peace in every area of your life. That's the law. So you take the prayer out on the road now. You take the prayer, and you're the living example of the prayer. That's where it matters the most. And that's when people start getting suspicious and say, Shawn, man, did you change your medication? I mean, you're looking way too happy all of a sudden. Well, you're not relying on anything outside of you to bring you joy. You're overcoming yourself every day. And people say to me, well, why do you do your meditations in the morning? I always say, easy. Because if I can overcome myself at the beginning of the day, the rest of the day is easy.
Right.
Because that's the biggest mastery, right? Is the self. And so people are waking up to that, and they enjoy the process of seeing when they make those type of changes, the feedback that's happening in their lives. The synchronicities, the opportunities, the coincidences, those serendipities that are starting to happen, and they're going, wow, I am powerful. Yeah. Hey, I am a creator. And nobody's excluded from the equation. That's what makes it so cool. So people that are really sick, really, really sick, that are healing, they'll tell you that when they go to the doctor and the doctor said, where's the stage 4 cancer? They'll tell the doctor it's in the old person. I'm somebody else. Well, how'd you do it? Well, I downregulated the genes for disease by overcoming these emotions and these behaviors and thoughts, and I upregulated the genes for health. The doctor kind of looks at him and was like, wow, because it is possible to do that. And we've actually measured it in our events. We know that in 4 days, you can really change your gene expression. Genes that help restore balance, for cancer cells and tumors. Genes that activate stem cells to repair the cells that are damaged. Genes for neurogenesis, the growth of new neurons in your brain. Genes for oxidative balance, for the microtubules, the cellular structure, and the replication of cells. These are all activated in 4 days by people thinking differently, making different choices, doing different things, having new experiences, feeling new emotions. Your genes actually change. And so we're not doomed by our genes. We're not hardwired to be a certain way for the rest of our lives. We are marvels of adaptability and change. So then what does it mean to change? Change means then to be greater than your body, greater than the body that has been conditioned emotionally to be the mind, greater than the body habituated into a predictable future, to be greater than the environment, to be greater than the conditions in your life. And if you're not being defined by a vision of the future and you wake up every morning, it makes total sense then when you see the same people and you go to the same places and you do the exact same thing at the exact same time. Now your personality is no longer creating your personal reality. Your personal reality is creating your personality because every person, every object, everything, every place is mapped neurologically in your brain. And since you've experienced your boss, since you've experienced your coworker, since you've experienced your ex, the moment you've experienced them at some point, there's an emotion associated with them. So then all of a sudden, people wake up and they're not aware of this, but their environment is influencing the way they think and the way they feel. So when things are going good, they feel good. When things are bad, they feel bad, which means they're victims to their environment. Why are you unhappy? Well, this person made me unhappy, which means unconsciously, that person is actually controlling the way I feel and the way I think. Now I'm a victim to that circumstance. So to change then is to be greater than that environment. So then you would have to reprogram the way you'd think and the way you'd feel to no longer return back to the same state of being. Now that's the mastery, because it isn't just having a great meditation and then getting on the freeway and flipping everybody off or judging your coworker.
Right.
You just return back to the old self. You got to be able to maintain that modified state of mind and body your entire day. And if you can, get ready, because weird things are going to happen in your life. So the person who's starting to try it out in a curious way, like, let's just do the experiment. Let's just see if I change my energy, I change the way I think I feel, is there going to be some effect in my life? When they start seeing that, they're no longer like, oh, I got to go create my, my life today. They're actually excited to do it because they don't want the magic to end. They want to keep it going. Now, that's when it gets kind of cool, because this is when you start believing in yourself. And when you believe in yourself, you believe in possibilities, right? When you believe in possibilities, you got to believe in yourself. When you stop believing in possibilities, you can't believe in yourself. So people are waking up and going, wow, it doesn't matter your skin color, it doesn't matter how rich you are, it doesn't matter how healthy you are, it doesn't matter how young you are, how old you are, how in shape, out of shape. Not even if you've ever meditated before. It doesn't even matter. It's a formula. And you don't need 40 years of dedication to meditation to get it. You just got to understand the formula. And like playing ping pong or hitting a golf ball or dancing the salsa, you're going to figure it out sooner or later. And it's going to get easier and it's going to get fun. That's what we want for people.
Oh my goodness. There were several times that I got the chills. Like of course, like a lot of people know my story, but to hear you articulate some of these things that nobody's ever said before in almost 400 episodes, I've mentioned them, but you consolidated it in such a way that, my rock bottom was sitting there and it was like a meta perspective of myself, and I could see myself sitting on the edge of the bed, holding these bottles of pills to knock myself out so I can sleep. And that's when I decided to get well in that moment after I'd gotten all those no's.
You'll never forget that moment. That is the moment that defined you.
It's crazy, and so that was that moment where I started to lose my mind, basically. I've never said those words before, but it's like you said, like I made up my mind. When you said that earlier, that the person they just say I made up my mind. That's exactly what happened, and I felt chills in my body from that. And so, to fast forward that a little bit, getting back to something actually we're going to step back to go forward, but you mentioned the present moment, and that really this is where all of this stuff is happening. But I think that word can be a little bit vague.
Yeah.
So can you define what that means for us?
I'm so glad you said that because it means you're engaged. I assert that if you're not in the present moment, you're running a program, right? And paying attention is being present. And it's a skill just like anything else. The more you practice it, the better you get at it. And you know when someone's present with you in your life because they're paying attention to you. And you know when they're not present with you because they're not paying attention to you. So where you place your attention is where you place your energy. So if you have all of your attention in the present moment, you're conserving a lot of energy to create with. If I'm talking to you and you're thinking about where you're going to go for lunch and who you're going to go with and how you're going to get there, and I'm talking to you, you left the present moment and your attention went to some future. And your energy will go down and you won't be able to comprehend what I said. If you start thinking about what you should have said at the staff meeting 3 days ago, and I'm talking to you and your mind is back in the past, you're siphoning energy out of the present moment into the past. So people are constantly siphoning their energy into a familiar past or a predictable future because that's where their attention is. And the stronger the emotions that we feel to certain problems and conditions in our life, the more we pay attention to them. Right. So we give our power away to our ex. We give our power away to that big problem. And that's creative energy that we should be able to use to create a new future. So then when a person's sitting in a meditation and they're doing absolutely nothing, and it's 8 o'clock in the morning, and their body for the last 10 years has been going in traffic and getting angry and frustrated in traffic, and now they're sitting in a meditation at 8 o'clock in the morning, the body's going to say, hey, you're off schedule. I'm used to suffering and getting angry here. Yeah. So the body's going to start looking for that emotion, and it's going to start influencing the mind, and you're going to start getting images and memories just so you could feel that emotion. Like now the person's back in the past, but if they become aware that they're siphoning energy out of the present moment into the past, and they settle the body back down into the present moment, that's a victory. Yeah. And those victories add up. And you're telling the body in that moment that it's no longer the mind, that you're the mind, and that's a victory. And then people get frustrated and they say, I can't meditate. Oh, really? Well, actually, you're doing it right. That's actually what meditation, you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And then all of a sudden the body says, well, it's 8:15 now. This is when you normally, go get something to eat and you have your coffee and your body's starting to want to get up and do something. You become aware that your body wants to get up and move and you're in the meditation. And you tell your body, You bring it back to the present moment and you settle it back down. You are training the animal. That's a victory. Now you're executing a will that's greater than the program because most people lose their free will to a program. Now you're telling the body, I'll tell you when we get up, not when you want to get up. You're not the mind, I'm the mind. And that's a victory. Now, we've done the research on this. If you keep doing this and you stay with it, sooner or later, the body's going to surrender to a new mind. And when that happens, Shawn, there's a liberation of energy. The body is freed from those habituations and those emotions. The body's going from particle to wave, from matter to energy. And all of a sudden, you're dialing down the anger. You're dialing down the vigilance. And the body now is being conditioned to a new mind. That is the present moment. And when you're in that present moment, something really amazing happens. You forget about you. All of a sudden, you're not your face, you're not your culture, you're not your marital status, you're not your diet, you're not your past. You're basically just an awareness. You're in the unknown. And that is the perfect place to create from. So it turns out that when people do this properly, they heal themselves of anxiety. Why? Because they're no longer obsessing about some future. When they find the present moment, they heal from their depression because they're not a bit hopeless and powerless in their past. The body's conditioned now. And so then, when they overcome themselves in their meditation and they step out into their life, they are more present. They can connect. They are more patient. They are more loving because they overcome the animal part of themselves. And the beauty behind that is that all of a sudden, you're not predictable. All of a sudden, something's different about Shawn. He's not, I'm noticing he's not behaving the same way. You're out of the known, right? You're in the unknown. And all of a sudden, people, it's no longer what you're saying to them. It's who you are. They're just kind of scratching their head going, hey, he looks like he's really happy. I want some of that. And now we're out of the philosophical, theoretical realm. We're in the practicum, which is where really the magic happens. So the eternal present moment, the sweet spot of the generous present moment is the place we create from. And when we're there, we disconnect from our bodies. We become nobody. We disconnect from people in our lives. We're not thinking about our ex or our boss. We are no one. We're not thinking about our cell phone or our computer. We are no thing. We are not thinking about where we live, where we work, where we sleep. We are nowhere. And we're not thinking about the predictable future and the familiar past. We're in no time. And when you're disconnecting or dissociating from everything known, you're in the unknown. And that's where the magic happens.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
All therapists have a good heart and want to help, but it's a broken model. Where else would you go? I invite you to bring your pain to me, pay me every week to talk about it. I might not even be able to help you. And with my clients, people in pain want to get better, whether that's physical pain, I've got headaches or eczema, or emotional pain, I feel inadequate, I lack self-esteem, I'm self-destructive, I sabotage myself. They all want to get better fast. So I created my own therapy called RTT. And the whole point was, let's treat the root, not the symptom. All my graduates are taught to look for what lies beneath. So when people come in and go, I'm a compulsive shopper, compulsive shoplifter, I've got this compulsive scratching or itching, or I've got terrible headaches, or I've got irritable bowel, or I'm addicted to sugar. We don't treat that. We treat what lies beneath. And in RTT, it's what I call the 5 eyes. First of all, you become like a detective. You investigate, where did this begin? People go, I've never been able to I'm not good with confrontation. I don't like being the center of attention. When no baby is born going, hey, don't look at me. I haven't got any hair. I haven't got any teeth. I've got these really fat legs. Having children, they love attention.
Yeah.
The first thing you're born with is attention. No baby says, I can't leave food. When they've had enough, they just stop. So I understood that all of our issues are acquired. And that's actually great news, because if you acquire an issue, you can become free of it. So we investigate, where did this come from? And then we find the imprint that has caused the behavior. And then we interpret it, interrupt it, get rid of it. Give you a great example. I work with a lot of anorexics and bulimics because conventional medicine cannot help those poor kids. It weighs them and tries to get them to... It's a mental illness. And I worked with someone who said, so we went back, when did this begin? And this girl remembered being in the car with her dad, who'd look at women and go, look at her. look at her dressed like that in those tight clothes. She's just a tramp. And she began to think, I never want anyone to say that about me. And her dad would say about her mum, your mum is a slut. She wears all these tight clothes. And she formed a thought, which is an imprint. I couldn't bear it if my husband spoke about me like that. Now, when you say something to the mind, it's an absolute command. Do anything and everything to make sure that doesn't happen. And then I worked with an anorexic who said almost the same thing. My dad used to look at porn. And I found him one day by mistake looking at porn, and I was this princess, and I thought a thought. I never want anyone to look at me like that. And now the mind's like, okay, my job is to make sure no one ever looks at you like that. So the anorexic didn't develop. The bulimic got very heavy. They both had the same thought. I don't want to be looked at like that. And they both changed their shape. And I work with many obese women and men, and they almost always go back to being abused. I don't want my mum's husband to look at me like that. I don't want my granddad to look at me in that weird way. I can't handle it. And the mind goes, you leave that with me. I can find a way of making sure no one looks at you with that lusty look. And that's what happens. The mind acts on our thoughts. Every thought you think and every word you say is a blueprint that your mind must work towards. The most common example is someone who says, I was in a relationship and that person broke my heart. They ripped it out and stabbed it. I could never go through that pain again. It would kill me to be rejected like that again. If I met another woman that took all my money, another guy that cheated on me, I would die. And your mind goes, you would die? You can't die. My job is to keep you alive. And if a relationship will make you die, leave that with me. I'll make sure you never have one again. I can give you gas. I can give you compulsive. I can make you a complete bitch. I can do anything. I can make you have become a recluse. But I can make sure that doesn't happen. And you see, we say these crazy things. My job is killing me. This commute makes me want to die. If I have one more customer like that, I'm going to jump under a train. And the mind goes, this place called work is killing you? Oh, no. My job is to keep you alive. So why don't I give you a lovely ulcer so you can't go to this place called work, and then it can't kill you?
So this is leading me to an important question I want to talk to you about, which is, I heard you say something along the lines of our thoughts create our reality, right? And so when I hear statements, even today, this is before, us meeting each other, but when I would hear somebody say, I'm starving, it would literally pop in my mind like, you're not really starving.
You're not.
But these words that we use really do create our existence.
Yeah. Do you know that's so true? Because the strongest force in every human being in the world is that you must act in a way that is utterly consistent with how you define yourself. The words you speak, the thoughts you think, your mind has no choice but to make that real. Some people say, I'm starving. I'm dying of hunger. I could eat a horse. Your mind really believes that's true. Yeah. When you say, this is killing me, this is driving me insane, this kid is making me want to die. Your mind goes, you're never having another one. If one makes you want to die, why don't I just give you unexplained infertility, secondary infertility? Because we think our mind's job is to make us happy. It really isn't. It's just to keep you alive on a planet when not long ago the odds weren't that great. So everything we do is to keep us alive. One of the reasons we can't bear to be hungry is that is the number one thing that killed us 500 years ago, not disease, hunger. And our mind to this day is scared of hunger. And our logical mind goes, I've got fish and chicken in the fridge at home and salad. But the illogical mind goes, I'm going to die of hunger. I'm just going to eat all these jelly beans now and taco chips. And if you only knew that you could dialogue back with your mind, you could have everything you want in the world, because people know, I just heard Barack Obama say mindset. You need mindset. 80% of success is mindset. They don't even know what mindset is.
Right.
I said, what's mindset? They go, I don't know. It's something. Yeah. Is it focus? No. It's how you dialogue with you. Yeah. And since your mind believes everything you tell it, you might as well tell it amazing stuff.
Oh my goodness, that's so true. That's the other part I want to get to is programming more empowering things.
Sure.
But for me, it's just like just going back on the statement of I'm starving. We're going to naturally have a tendency towards
Of
overeating,
course.
most likely. So it's
Yeah.
just I think awareness is important. Obviously, being aware of the language that we're using with
Yeah.
ourselves. But I got to ask you this, and maybe this is a really big question, but how is it that some of us can become aware of our deficiencies? We can become aware of our stories, the roots, but yet we're not able to change it.
I guess because no one teaches this stuff. No one teaches you, that you have a choice. You see, here's one of the rules of the mind. I have like 23 rules of the mind, but here's the best one. Your mind does not care if what you tell it is right or wrong, true or false, useful or useless, helpful or not helpful, beneficial or not beneficial. It doesn't care. It lets it in. You make your beliefs, but then your beliefs make you. And then even more oddly, the world starts to actually match what you believe. If you believe everyone's out to get you, and dogs are vicious creatures that attack you, you can make that belief real. And if you believe people are actually honestly really very nice and kind, and dogs are lovely creatures, they're man's best friend, that too will become real. So a lot of people know this stuff, but they actually don't know how to change it. So I had an American PA for one, I loved her, and she used this expression all the time. When I got the job with you, I wanted to die. When I knew I was coming to London, I wanted to die. And this cute English guy asked me out, I wanted to die. I'm like, darling, you don't want to die. You want to live. Stop saying, I want to die. Because some people, nobody teaches us this stuff. If you go, oh my God, I've got a memory like a sieve, I forget everything, you make that real. And it's very important when working with children to really be aware of not saying, so, I see many people with wealth blocks. They come in and go, I can't make money, I can't keep money, I can't attract money. And your relationship with money is actually fixed almost before you are 5 years old. And if you see your father going, this job is killing me, this is the price you pay for working for yourself. So one of my clients said, my dad used to lie on the sofa every Sunday with a headache and go, that's what happens when you have your own business. It kills you. Or another one said, my dad took antacids every morning and said, I've got an ulcer because this job is killing me. And a small child thinks, I don't want that job that's killing me. I'd rather not have a job. And then they've got this wiring, this coding that now says a job will kill you. And even though they want a job, they don't understand this old wiring. So it's very much the same thing when you have a parent that says, if you're a good kid, you'll eat everything on your plate. You know how much money I spent on that? Think of those starving children. And they're wired to eat everything until they don't understand how to leave food. Or even more simple, the parents going, come on, school bus is coming, hurry up. You're making everyone late. And children naturally eat very slowly. They engage with the food. When you're feeding your baby, you've got the next spoon. They're not going to take it till they've done with the first one. But when you make them eat fast and make them eat fast, you wire into them this eating mindlessly without even thinking what's in front of you. Do I want it? Do I like it? I don't know. I just hoover it all up.
This reminds me of, I grew up, I literally heard these statements every day of my life. I want to go to the store and just get some penny candy. And my mom, I asked my mom for money and she says, I'm broke as a joke.
Yeah.
Was her big thing. That was
Sure.
the classic.
Yeah.
But do I look like I'm made of money?
Of
All these different
course.
statements. And whenever we would have food, because there were times when, we had to get food from WIC program,
Sure.
food stamps, or food pantries. And whenever we'd get a plate of food, she'd say, eat it all.
Yeah, of course.
Eat it all. And
Yeah.
and it's like raises that question of like, if we're poor, how is everybody obese?
I know.
Right?
I know.
So that programming, and of course, once I got out of the environment and I decided I'm going to make my life different, even though I was semi-aware that this was a problem, I still repeated those behavior problems, right?
Yeah.
I would come into some money, I would find creative ways to get rid of it,
Of course.
right? So I'm assuming this happens for a lot of people.
70% of lottery winners are dead broke in 3 years. I worked with somebody recently who was working as a trash, we call them dustbinmen, I guess you call them trash collectors.
Yeah.
Anyway, he went from earning $300 a week, he got on the lottery, got $20 million, and within 3 years was dead broke. When I worked with him, he said, but I actually preferred it. I didn't know who I was with all that money. I didn't know who my friends were. You know, if I paid, they'd say I was showing off. If I didn't pay, they're like, you got $20 million. Do you still expect us to chip in? And he said, you know, I didn't enjoy it. But I've also worked with a lot of rock stars who make so much money, you know, always broke. And when you talk to them about their relationship with money, they'll go, well, you know, my dad got a paycheck on a Friday. It was run out by Thursday night. And so their pattern is you get money and you spend it. And when they win the lottery, they come into that pattern. They just buy stuff they don't need until it's all gone. The 30% who don't go broke when they win the lottery are the ones who already had money, already had a relationship with money and understood. You know, Donald Trump went broke. How fast did he come back? So if you have a template for love or money, you'll keep it. But one of the things about the mind that even psychiatrists aren't trained in, but which I found in my clients, is that we are hardwired to run back to what is familiar while avoiding what is unfamiliar. And that is a tribal behavior. If I live in a tribe and I decide I'm bored, and we used to live in walled cities and they locked the gate at night to keep you safe. Nobody said, oh, this is boring. I want something. No, I think I'll just climb over the gate and go and find another tribe because that was dangerous. We are hardwired to return to what is familiar and to run away from what's unfamiliar, even if it's bad for us. So people who don't have money actually reject money. People who don't have love, they reject love. They go, I don't really want that. I now feel dependent and vulnerable. I'd rather be on my own. And it sounds very hard to understand, but you see this in a 2-year-old. Your 2-year-old child all of a sudden goes, I don't want that yogurt, it's got lumps in it. I don't want that bowl. I only want the pink bowl and the blue spoon. I want the same story every night. I want the same movie every night, because familiar makes them safe. Exactly that age when they could wander out on the prairie and pick their own dangerous berries, they only want what they already know is familiar. And it's the most vexing thing for therapists to say, look, why don't you date a nice guy? Oh, they're too good for me. What they're saying is their behavior is so unfamiliar. I need to run back to what I want. And one of the fastest ways to get what you want in life is to look at your behavior and go, okay, what am I making familiar? I mean, I work with so many clients, movie directors, rock stars, film stars. When I go, I love your movie, they go, it was terrible. Didn't you notice? No, I thought it was amazing. You won an Oscar. I know, but the nominations that year were really bad. But you won another one. I know, but they were really bad that year. And then I go, you know what? You know what's wrong with you? You can't accept praise. Tell me about your life. Well, my dad always said, well, there's nothing to you. You're never going to make it. People like us don't make it. When I made it, he was resentful. But that's not work. Recently, a client said to me, my dad said, you haven't suffered enough to be successful. You don't deserve all this success. You just ponce around making movies. But I drive a cab, you know, I am successful. What you do doesn't count. If you saw Rocket Man, there's a very sad scene where Elton goes to visit his dad and he says, sign this album. And he said, oh, not for me. I don't even like your music. That's someone at work. So rejecting, withholding parents give their child a familiar. What is familiar is criticism. What is unfamiliar is praise. And what's so tragic is that people who never get praise, when you give them, they go, hey, I love your hat. They go, oh, it's not mine. I just found it in a lift. Oh, I love your talk. Oh, I forgot the best bit. So they not only do they reject what is unfamiliar, they add what is familiar, criticism. And people think depression is because of a chemical imbalance in your brain. It really isn't. The number one thing that causes depression are harsh, hurtful, critical words that you say to yourself on a daily basis, and blocking praise while adding in criticism will make anybody depressed.
That's so powerful. And I've got so many different ideas and stories that have come up for me personally and that I've just seen with all the people that I've worked with. But I just want to pivot back to when you said that we are hardwired to do this, and how kids are kind of adverse. They have an adverse response to new things with food, for
Of
example.
course.
And we just like, why won't the kid just eat? And
Yeah.
I was just with my friend, Shawn T, and he's got twins, and they just turned 2. He knows they'll eat sweet potato and chicken, right? And a lot of times you just want to deal with the fuss, And we did that same thing with my son, and we're, kind of considered nutrition experts. And so it's more of like there's a patience factor, because
Yeah.
his little brain is just saying like, I don't know about this. I don't know what the
Exactly.
response is going to be,
Yeah.
because some stuff through my evolution could have made me very sick or killed
Yeah,
me. So
exactly.
there has to be a level of patience and understanding.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to do when our culture is pushing us to do everything faster.
Yeah.
Right? This is blowing my mind.
Yeah, if one of the things we teach people on RTT is the psychology of human behavior, because we all want to run our mind and run our life. If you want to run your mind, you better understand it. And if you understand your mind, there's only 3 things wrong with everybody. One is I'm not enough. One is I want something that's not available. And the other is I'm different, so I can't connect. Whatever you're treating somebody for, if you're a psychiatrist, a doctor, a mental health worker, you only have to treat those 3 things. And then even better is, I was told that the mind is very complex and it takes a lifetime to understand the workings of your mind and a second lifetime to put it into practice. I'm like, no, that can't be. Nobody would go, hey, Shawn, here's a great brain. Oh my God, your brain's amazing. And you know what? When you're 95, you'll crack it. What a shame it's too late to put it into practice. And I thought that can't be true. And in fact, I'm very lucky that I've traveled all over the world working with everyone from CEOs to billionaires to someone who's got a bakery or is a school teacher. And our brains all work the same. They're very simple. The mind does what it thinks you want based on what you tell it. If you go, that will kill me, I'd die if I do that. I'd rather die than give a speech. Oh my God, I'm so terrified of standing, opening my mouth and sounding stupid. Your mind goes, don't worry, I'll give you a massive panic attack. You'll never get on that stage. When you say, I'll do anything rather than have to have that meeting with my boss next week, your mind goes, how about a chronic bout of diarrhea? If you keep saying, God, I don't want to do that. I do anything not to do that. Or even when you go, I'd love to lie around or with nothing to do, your mind goes, how about the flu? So your mind does what it thinks you want it to do, and it bases it exactly on the words you use and the pictures you make. That's the mind. And if you haven't got what you want in life, your mind thinks you don't want that. And if you've got a lot of things that you don't want, like procrastinating and self-sabotage, I can guarantee you've said somewhere, I'm scared of being successful. What if I eclipse my husband and no guys like wealthy women? Or, if I make it, I'll be a terrible parent. Or if I make it, the stress will make me ill. So if you haven't got what you want, your mind thinks you don't want that. And if you've got a lot of things you'd rather not have, your mind goes, no, you need those. They're very useful to you. People can't reject you now. So your mind does what it thinks you want, always. Even if it's completely wrong, the way you feel about everything is only down to 2 things: the pictures you make in your head and the words you say to yourself. There's nothing else. You could say, God, I'm going to get in this metal tube and hurtle through the air and that's going to kill me. You could go, oh, wow, I've got 6 hours on a plane. I can watch my favorite movie. I've downloaded my favorite show, can read a book. And we are wired to love what is familiar and avoid what is unfamiliar. That's a fact. But here's an even better fact. You can make anything you like familiar or unfamiliar. Shoving a lens in your eye is a very unfamiliar thing to do. No one goes, oh, here's a lens, wham it in. I've done it. It takes about 10 days. And then you can do it even without a mirror. You can make anything familiar. And if you want to make something good familiar, make it praise. Because there is nothing on the planet, nothing that will boost your self-esteem like praise. And there's nothing that will wither it like criticism.
So hearing this and the fact that we run back to what's familiar, like we're just
Yeah,
hardwired to do this, but we can
course.
make the unfamiliar familiar. And I'm thinking about, and I know a lot of people listening, they've either been in this situation or have friends just like, why are you still with that person?
know.
Why do you keep running back to the abuse? It's
Yeah.
because it's familiar.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, that's such a great question. I work with so many people who go, I could go to a bar, there could be 500 people there. I seem to go home with the one who's abusive and critical. I'm like, well, that's because it's your dad. You're in bed with your dad, you're having sex with your dad. People go, oh, we just clicked, I felt I'd known them my whole life. Well, you did. That was your father, withholding father, or it's very critical mother. But you know what? You can choose to do something else. So when they go, well, he was too good for me, she was out of my league, what they're saying is, this behavior is unfamiliar. Let me run back to what's familiar. But you can make anything you like familiar. Peeing in the toilet wasn't familiar once. Getting a banana in your mouth was not familiar. I mean, I have pictures of my daughter when I first gave her a yogurt. It's in her hair, it's in her ear. But now she can eat a yogurt. You can make anything familiar. And one of the things to do is to go, I will make this familiar. Yeah. So I worked with a girl a little while ago who dated horrible men who hurt her. And her father was super critical, super withholding. And that's the kind of guy she went for. And I said, okay, this is what you do. You say, I am going to make a nice guy familiar. Never add, if it kills me, or if it's the last thing I do. Just say, I'm choosing to make a nice guy familiar. It will feel a little odd, but if you keep saying it, it becomes real. It's no different to saying, I drink tea every day with heavy cream and sugar, and I know it's bad. So I'm going to have black tea or herb tea. And the first time I try to go, oh, this isn't the same. You go, but I'm making it familiar. I'm making it familiar. I'm choosing to like it this way, because when you say to the mind, I'm choosing to say no to candy and yes to fruit, no to donuts and yes to fruit. If you say the words, I'm choosing to do this and choosing to feel great about it, your mind goes, oh, you want this? I'm going to make it happen. When you go, oh, this fruit is so boring, it doesn't taste anything like a donut, your mind goes, go back to what's familiar. So if you want to make something familiar, add in this sentence, I am choosing to make this familiar, and I'm choosing to feel great about it. People even say, I want to go running, but oh, it hurts and my knees hurt. I bought a gym membership, but I don't like it. It's too hard. And if you go, I'm choosing to work out every day. I'm choosing to meditate. I'm choosing to make a NutriBullet instead of a coffee. I'm choosing to eat salad instead of taco chips, and I'm choosing to love it. Your mind will move you towards it like a laser really fast. And if you go, oh, it's not the same, is it? I'm eating this rabbit food now. Who likes that? Your mind will move you away from it.
Yeah. I could speak from experience on that one.
Yeah,
I would see, even when I met my wife and we were just dating, she would eat salads. I didn't eat a salad until I was in my mid-20s. And I literally would say, why are you eating that rabbit food? Like, you might as well go outside and grab something off that tree. First of all, what's wrong with that? The tree, whatever's on the tree is probably healthier than, my pasta or whatever. But it's the language that we use. It just creates an aversion, or it can draw us closer.
Sure.
So I want to ask you about the ownership language that we use as well. That's something I would see in my practice in the years I was working as a nutritionist. People come in, they say, my diabetes, my heart disease, my cancer. They would really own whatever these different issues is. My depression, my anxiety, my social anxiety. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, when you prefix anything with my, you own it. My is an ownership word. And if you put my in front of it, my diabetes, my cancer, my migraine, I need my cookies, I need my Starbucks every morning. If you say that, you own it. And if you call it that's a neutral. You see, women don't like it when you go, here's the wife. Because that's insulting. The wife, here's the kids. How about my kids? So if you understand, if you call something my, you own it. You can go, this is my house, this is my book I wrote, this is my kid. Aren't they great? You don't call something if you're not going to possess it. But don't ever say, I've got my headache again. It's the headache. I've got the headache. I don't own it. It doesn't belong to me. I've got the illness. I've got the tension. My little girl went to visit my mother and came back and went, Mummy, I've got my tension headache. I'm like, no, darling, you're 5 years old. 5-year-olds don't get tension. That's a grandma word. We don't do illness. We don't do pills and medication. But my mother was a massive hypochondriac, and I had to teach my daughter that I've got my irritable bowel, I've got my this. And one day she said to my mum, Grandma, what are all those pills? She goes, well, that's for my headaches. That's for my leg pain. That's for my stomach ache. But Grandma, how do they all know where to go? Which I thought was a great question.
Right.
But if you don't want to own something, never call it my temper. You know, I'm Irish. I've got my temper. I'm Italian, of course. I've got the alcoholic gene. No, you haven't. Genes are only 1% of you. So a very simple thing to do is look at how you speak to yourself, because the words you use are the blueprint for what you are. Take out the word my, you can go my ambition, my drive, my passion to be a speaker. I got something to say and I can say it. But if you go, oh, I got my nervous stomach now, you know, when I go on stage, my blushing happens, and then I open my mouth and my fear makes me go, and I knew I'd messed that up. No. So put the word my in front of something you want and put the word the in something you don't want.
Yeah.
But even the words you put in front of it, you can go, I am freaking awesome. That's more powerful than awesome. I'm amazingly driven. I'm super successful. I'm fantastically motivated. That sends a clear message to your mind.
Yeah.
So if you want to have a mindset and you want to dialogue with your mind, here's a couple of things to understand. The mind only works in the present tense. You can't go next year, I'll be rich. Next year, I'll have a bikini body. Next year, I'll have a great relationship, because your mind doesn't even know what that is. It has to be now. I'm successful now. I'm healthy now, even though it isn't true. It must be in the present tense. It must make a picture, saying every day in every way, my life is better. I call that a WTF expression. What does that even mean? Life is a walk through a garden. No, it isn't. Sometimes it's raining and you step in dog mess. So that's not true. But if you say, okay, I'm motivated. I love what I do. I'm on fire with passion. I love spending the whole weekend working on my website. I'm thrilled to be an RTT therapist. I've got something to share with the world, and I'm amazingly super successful. And mine goes, oh, your words are telling me very clearly what you want. Present tense, exciting words. Put exciting words in front of the words. So if you go, I'm not bad me, I have good days and bad days, that's a WTF. If you go, I am motivated, passionate, I've got a gift, I got a skill all of it, and I'm monetizing that gift every day. I'm doing it right now. Your mind goes, your words are telling me exactly where you want to go, and I'm going to take you there. But if your words are vague, your mind goes, well, I'm stuck here now because I don't really understand what you want. So people go, I want a wild, passionate. So, for instance, I used to live in Notting Hill. It's got lots of rock stars there. My friend lived in a street with this rock star, and she used to sing this song, I want that guy. And she said, I want him. I want him in my bed. I want that guy. And actually, it wasn't that difficult. He got drunk one day, pressed the wrong doorbell, and she got him in her bed, and they had a great night. She never saw him again. I'm like, why didn't you go? I want that guy for life. Our souls are going to collide. We're going to bump into each other. He's going to fall in love with him. I'm going to fall in love with him. We'll be together forever. You said, I want that guy for a night of passion. And you got it. You're a great manifester, but you could have kept the manifestation going. People go, I want more money. Well, here's $5. No, I don't want that. People say to me, I want to be pregnant. I go, really? That's all I want? I said, I don't think so. You could be pregnant 6 times and never have a baby. If you say, I want to be pregnant, that's what you get. How about I want to create a perfect, healthy, robust, perfect baby? In fact, I insist on, I require my body to give me a perfect pregnancy, to grow a perfect baby who's going to be born full term. Perfect. Your mind goes, I understand what you want. I thought you just wanted to be pregnant. But now I see you want a perfect, robust, healthy, full-term baby. And you can add in, I can have a fantastic, easy birth too. Because if you tell your mind what you want and you put in the detail, it gives you what you want. But if you don't, it's like going to a restaurant and going, hey, can you bring me some food? And going, oh, I didn't want that.
Right.
Well, you get what you ask for.
Yeah.
I didn't want that. I don't like that sauce. It's like saying to someone, I'm going away. Could you paint my house? They go, I didn't want that. But you didn't tell them what you wanted.
Ah, I love this.
Detail. Detailed words. You know, people think this is affirmations. It's not. It's a detailed, relevant, up-to-date dialoguing with your mind using specific, exciting words. You know, Muhammad Ali said, hey, I said I was the greatest before I even knew I was, but I said it. I'm the greatest, and something amazing happened. I became the greatest. I wasn't when I said it, and then I was. He could have said, I'm not bad, me. I have good days and bad days, but where would that have taken him? See, when you see people who really make it, they dialogue with their mind in a very interesting way. People go, oh, well, they're born like that. So what? You can adopt it. You can make it your own. You don't have to be born with it. You just have to think, well, if that's what successful people do, why don't I do it too? And then I'll be successful. And that's absolutely true.
I love this so much. In the section on digital distraction, how task switching, right, multitasking, literally
Utilizes
just burns through our brain
fuel.
glucose, our
Yeah.
brain fuel so quickly and creates just more kind of mental fatigue.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
Jumping
We
around.
cite a number of studies in the book basically saying that when people are multitasking, I mean, what they really are doing, as you know, is task switching. They're going from one task to another. And not only does it waste time, you know, it could take anywhere from a few minutes to 20 minutes to regain your focus and your flow. We did a whole chapter on flow states in the area of motivation, but it also burns an immense amount of energy and glucose. And so I would focus and people want to, and one of the reasons why you can't focus though is because we're always multitasking, and those devices. And again, I'm not anti-technology. Technology allows us to reach right now in this conversation a global audience. It's amazing. It allows you to inspire, to be able to connect. And yet, you know, we are supposed to be using technology as a tool, but when technology uses us, who becomes the tool? I'm just saying, add mindfulness, add some consciousness in terms of just don't pick up the phone out of habit or out of boredom, right? Then it's using us.
Yeah. Nobody wants to be a tool. So
We should make that a shirt.
in order for us to really elevate beyond these kind of, four digital dictators,
Yeah.
I think it's important as a starting point for us to revisit your faster method.
Yeah.
I think it's super powerful if people really get these pieces. It's like a big umbrella of success.
Yes.
Let's talk about that.
Let's talk about it, because I think if there's one skill to master in the 21st century, it's our ability to learn quicker, because the world is changing so fast, you know. And right now, whether people are working at home or they're learning from home, that's the ultimate skill, because if there was a genie that could grant you any one wish, just one wish, you would wish, what would everyone wish for?
More wishes.
More wishes, right? Infinite wishes, millions of wishes. And now if I was your learning genie and I could help you learn any one, like master any one skill or any one subject, what would the equivalent be of asking for, you know, more wishes or infinite wishes? It would be learning how to learn, because then if you could learn how to learn, you could grant your own wishes. You could apply that towards anything. Mandarin, martial arts, music, management, you know, marketing, anything gets easier after that. And so the faster method I open up in the book, where I actually show people how to read this book. And I take people on the journey, right? Like when people enter it, it's that hero's journey where I challenge them to take the call to adventure, right? Take the blue pill or take the red pill. And we use the metaphor of, you know, I literally mapped it out, and there's a graphic in the hardcover book of the hero's journey mapped out with the table of contents. And of course, I'm referring to Joseph Campbell's work. And so you're going through there, you go through some trials and challenges, you find a mentor who teaches you some skills, you know, you find your Yoda or you find your Miyagi, you know, and then,
Morpheus.
right, exactly. And then you come back, and then you have that elixir, that treasure, and then you go back into the world and do some amazing things with it by helping other people. But going through the faster method, I teach you how to learn anything faster. So this book will actually help you learn every other book after it. So really quick, it's an acronym. The F stands for forget.
And you're like, Jim, you're the memory guy. I've seen you on video memorize all these people's names and numbers and words and everything. But I would quickly remind you that if you want to learn something faster, forget temporarily what you already know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have to have that Zen beginner's mind. And that means you're a sponge and you just start absorbing information, because what keeps us from learning faster is this idea we already know it. And so many people will come to you, and I'm sure you've had this conversation because you meet so many experts, and they or people who say they're experts, and they say I have 20 years experience in this field, and when you really deconstruct what they know, it feels like they only have 1 year of experience that they just repeated every year. So they have 20 years, they repeated it. And so because they're stuck in their own epistemology and what they think about something. And you have to have an open mind. It's cheesy, like any cliche, but it's true. Your mind is like a parachute. It only works when it's opened, right? So forget what you currently know temporarily so you can learn something new. Because if someone is teachable and they have motivation, they're unstoppable, right? So you have to have that open mind. And temporarily also forget about what's going on in the world, because we talked about distraction. If you want to learn salsa, or you want to learn Spanish, or you want to learn software programming, whatever you're learning, when ideas come in your mind that has nothing to do with the task at hand, just write them down so you don't fight them, so you can forget about them temporarily.
But that's really a big part of the mindset.
It is.
It's like coming into it deciding I already know a thing.
Yeah.
You've already blocked the ability to absorb and to learn something new.
Yeah.
You know, and for me, this is a huge, huge one. And it's something that I've really cultivated over the years. Number one, I feel like I'm a student. Everybody can teach me something.
Oh, I
Even
love
when
that,
I was leaving
that
out,
mindset.
you know, in the car coming over here, and the kid next door, he said something to me, and it's just like I started to process and learn from what he just said.
I love that about
It's a
you.
simple statement, you know.
Yeah.
And once we think that we've got it all figured out, and I love the quote that you put in here. I'm going to paraphrase a little bit from Mark Twain. That it's not what you don't know that will hurt you. It's what you do know that ain't so.
Yeah.
Right? And there's so many things, like even now, a year from now, some of the things that we see in clinical research that is a certain way, we're going to disprove it. We're going to find that it's different, or there's a different dimension, or it's not always true in this situation. So keeping ourselves open to learning. I love that you start with that. Forget.
Yes.
And come into the situation with an open mind. It's so powerful.
And I think that's what makes you such a great learner and a great also host of this show, because you're present and having that. And I can't tell you how many times, you know, I've seen interviews or I've listened to podcasts where people are talking about something and they drop a gem there, and I'm like, oh, and then the person just goes on, oh, and so the next, you know, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're not really listening, they're not really open, and I feel like that's where we could always expand. That the best teachers are the best students forever. So I love that. So that's the F, is you forget, and also forget about what's possible temporarily, and going to mindset. This really falls in the area of mindset, meaning that, you know, always have a beginner's mind. That everybody, I love that belief that you have, that everyone can teach you something. Everyone in some way is your superior. They have different life conditions, and you know, children, you learn from just watching. It's amazing. So you can learn from everybody. You could watch somebody who's speaking on stage, and they could be the most boring speaker ever, and everyone's falling asleep, and I could be learning from them. Like, wow, now I know the formula for putting everyone to sleep. That's so fascinating.
They're so good at it.
Yeah, it's incredible. How do they do that? And get really curious. So that's the F in faster. The A stands for you need to act. All right. In order to learn something faster, learning is not a spectator sport. And so many treat it as like, because we were trained. You remember back in grade school, you were just sitting there, you had to just be quiet, you can't talk to your neighbors. It's just like you had to just be lectured to. And that's not how the brain works. The brain doesn't learn through consumption as much as it learns through creation and creativity and getting actively involved. So even right now, as you're listening to this show, how can you be more active in this process? How can you ask yourself new questions? Because questions have a lot of power, as you know, to it. How are you taking notes right now? And I think one of the best ways is to ask questions that are going to drive you to take this knowledge into action. Like, how can you apply this right now? How are you going to use it right now? So that's the A's. You want to be active, and you can't expect a teacher or a coach, a choreographer or a dance instructor or, anybody to do it for you. You have to do the work.
I love that statement that learning is not a spectator sport.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just that's the way that our system is set up for the most part. It's just like you sit there and information is thrown at you,
Yeah.
and you try and catch some of it.
Exactly. And it's a
If
teacher's
it lands on you, by the way.
Yeah, of course. And it's a teacher's, responsibility to do it to you, and that puts you at the effect. And you can never have a powerful, limitless life when you're just reacting to things and hoping they stick. So that's the A. Is to remind everyone to be active. The S in FASTER stands for state, and you and I have had this conversation before that all learning is state dependent. And state, I'm just defining as the current mood of your mind and your body. And I feel like that's one of the reasons why we didn't learn a lot back in school. It was a very slow process because what was the mood or emotion we felt back in school mostly? Boredom. And and really the key to a long-term memory, and I've said this before, information combined with emotion becomes a long-term memory. Information alone is forgettable, but information combined with emotion becomes a long-term memory. And so you want to control who's in control of our emotions. We are, right? But we put ourselves in trance thinking like emotions are just something we have. We either have focus or we don't have focus. We have energy or we don't have energy. We have curiosity or we don't have it. But it's not. You need to take those nouns and turn them into verbs. And states are something we constantly produce. We generate them. And so the two best ways of controlling our state of how we feel is, let me ask you a question, everybody. Like, what, on a scale of 0 to 10, what's your current state? How would you rate your state honestly as you're listening to this? And it might be a 5, it might be a 6, it might be a 7, right? And then play a game, play these mental games with yourself, have fun with it. What would you need to do to take it from a 7 to an 8 or a 7 to a 9? And probably it falls into one of two categories: changing what's going on in your mind or changing your body, right? Changing your psychology or changing your physiology. When people sit up and they breathe, or they put a smile on their face, or they put their thoughts on something more positive, then they change the way they feel. So I would never learn something in a bored state. Like, a lot of people read and they use reading as a sedative. It's a very boring process because they're not very good at it. So it has a lot of stress around it, and they're not retaining anything. They'll read a page in a book, get to the end, and just like, what did I just read? And they'll go back and reread it. But part of that has to do with their state. And so manage your state. All learning is state dependent. The T in FASTER, if you want to learn. Now, think about a subject or skill you want to learn, right? Think about that. The T is, what we're talking about is you want to teach it. Teach. You learn so you could teach. We learn things for the benefit it gives us. And I love this about you because I've had this conversation with you about some of the sleep issues that I've had in the past and other things. It's like, you're a sponge because you learn it for yourself. But then you also have the same passion to teach other people. As soon as you learn it, you tell people about it. Because I watch you on social media, I listen to your podcast. You learn it so you could teach it. And you learn it so much better as opposed to somebody who's just learning it for themselves, right? And so, if you could imagine right now somebody you wish was listening to this podcast, imagine that person and imagine how you would explain what you learned to them right after the show. You would pay attention way differently. You would take notes way, way, way differently. And when you're expressing it, when you teach something, you get to learn it twice, right? So teaching. And then finally, the E and the R in FASTER. The E is enter. And what are you entering in? I believe the number one productivity performance tool we have is our calendar. What you put in there, if you don't enter things in your calendar, they do not get done, right? And so you enter your doctor's appointment, you enter the PTA meeting with your kid, you enter meetings with your clients or your investor, right? But a lot of people in this community, they don't enter their personal growth. They don't enter when they're going to read that day or when they're going to journal or when they're going to work out. And then their day escapes them. And then they're like, oh, I forgot to do this because it wasn't in their calendar. So enter it. And when you enter it, it's more likely to happen. And then finally, the R in FASTER. If you want to learn any subject or skill faster, the R is review. Because the truth is, when you hear something once, within 24, 48 hours. In 48 hours, up to 80% of it is gone. They call it the forgetting curve. And so if you do a spaced review, that's why in every chapter I have them, before they go on, review what they just learned from the previous day, because that's important, because you're having this interval separation of information, and helps to take it from short term and consolidate it to more long-term memory.
Ah, I love this so much. You make this really powerful statement in the book, and this is a big part of learning. You say that questions are the answer.
Yeah.
Questions are the answer.
Let's talk
Why
about
is that?
this. Okay, so in order to learn any subject or skill faster, you need curiosity, right? And one of the reasons why, again, you're such an expert in so many areas is because you have this curiosity. I mean, is this something that you've always had as
Yeah,
your
I'd
whole
say
life?
so. Definitely. I was a shy kid too, so I was always observing
Really?
and just watching. Yeah, I was.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
it's surprising.
Yeah, it is. I mean, amazing. It's incredible. So I feel like that you ask the right questions on the show and you get the right answers, and ask and you shall receive, right? And so people ask about improving their focus, improving their memory, improving how their comprehension for what they read. And I would say start with the right questions, because we have anywhere from 50 to 70,000 thoughts a day. And a lot of those thoughts come in the form of questions. In fact, in the chapter I do on how to advance your thinking and solve problems and be a better decision maker, which I think is like the gem of like the book, that chapter alone, I feel like it's worth the value of the book, because our life is the sum total of all the questions we've asked to this point, right? And I have a quote in there from a French philosopher that says that life is the C between the B and the D. Life is the C between the B and the D. And you're thinking, Jim, you're speaking in tongues, you're speaking in code. What's the B? What's the D? I don't get this. Let me give you a hint. The B is birth. So what's the D?
Death.
Death. And C, which is life, C stands for choice. We right now, our life is a sum total of the choices and decisions we've made up to this point. And part of our decision-making process is on default. Remember that technology is this digital default. We want it done for us, and we haven't developed these thinking skills. But thinking, when you think about it, and I go through various models on how to make good decisions and how to solve problems and how to be a better thinker, because I think school teaches you what to think, but not how to think. They teach you what to learn, but not how to learn. And so when you think about what thinking is this process of asking and answering questions inside our own mind.
Right.
And if you're asking yourself, is that true? Notice you had to ask a question to think about it, right? So that's positive proof. So a lot of these 50, 60, 70,000 thoughts a day are questions. And I believe that there are some questions you ask more than others. They're dominant questions. Maybe you have 1, 2, or 3 that you ask consciously and unconsciously throughout the day. And the reason why it's important is, we've talked about this, is your brain is primarily a deletion device. Let me say that again. Your brain is primarily a deletion device. It's trying to keep information out, because if it paid attention to everything, you would go insane, right? There's a billion stimuli we could be paying attention to. So what gets through that filter? The things that we care about, the things we're interested in, and things we ask questions about, because we have part of our brain, and we do a whole thing on brain anatomy in the book, because I want you to know how limitless your superpowers really are, and part of your brain called a reticular activating system, RAS, simple to remember. It really determines what you're going to focus on, and it gets activated by your questions. And so, as an example, I remember years ago, my sister would send me pictures and photographs, emails with this specific kind of breed of dog. It's a pug dog. They have a pug dog in Men in Black. It's like a smushy face, and you could dress them up like ballerinas. They're very compliant, right? But I didn't know. My question was like, why is she sending me all these pictures of pugs? And then I realized that her birthday was coming up. So she's a great marketer.
Dropping those hints.
Yeah, exactly. And so she was seeding all those, but I started asking a question about these pugs, and then guess what? I started seeing pugs everywhere. I would go to the grocery store, the health food store, and I would be checking out, and somebody's in front of me is holding a pug dog checking out. I'd be jogging in my neighborhood, and I swear to you, I saw a guy walking 6 pug dogs. And my question for everyone who's listening is, did the pug dogs just magically appear one day? No, of course not. They were always there, but they were not important to me because I wasn't asking the questions. They were part of that billion stimuli I was trying to keep out of my mind that I wasn't paying attention to. Now, here's the thing. What are your questions? What are the questions you're asking all the time that are bringing certain things into your life? You know, and it's like an algorithm. I talk about it in the book, where it's like you're programming yourself. It's like when you're going through Instagram or Facebook, everything you like and share. Have you ever noticed, like, you start like looking, liking a lot of cat videos or whatever, they start feeding you more cat videos, right? But our brains are the same way. If we start looking at, it's this, sometimes it's a scary time. We live in some very, turbulent times, and if the media is hijacking your amygdala to focus on fear, and you start looking at it all the time, your brain, you just start looking for threats everywhere, and that's all you see, and you delete everything you'd be grateful for. You delete all the opportunity. You delete, all the magic also in life. I'm not saying don't focus on things that could be threatening at all, but I'm saying, what are you asking questions about that dictate your focus? And so this dominant question, as an example, and we'll get to Will Smith as an example in a moment, is one of the ways of finding your dominant question is just to listen to your own voice. Another way is like journaling or meditating, because you see certain themes that come up constantly. And I think self-awareness, that really it's a superpower. This book is a book on self-awareness. It's an owner's manual for your mind and how to be conscious and mindful and put intent in your mindset, put intent in your motivation, put intent in the methods that you're using day to day. And so I took my friend through a process, and we found out her dominant question that she asks all the time is, how do I get people to like me? How do I get people to like me? Now, everyone listening, you don't know her age, you don't know her background, you don't know her job, you don't know what she looks like, her ethnicity, you don't know anything about her, but you know a lot about her. Like, if somebody is obsessed with asking the question, how do I get people to like me? What's her life? What's her personality like?
It's going to be one that tries to cater to everybody else.
Yeah. Exactly that. You become that person is going to be a sycophant, right? They're going to be people pleasing all the time. They're going to be martyring themselves. People are going to take advantage of them. Their personality is always going to change depending on who they're spending time with, because they're going to, talk about the same kind of interests and have the same kind of values, right? They have low self-esteem, and all that, and you only know one question she asks herself. That's it. And my question for everybody listening is, what's your dominant question? What's the question you're thinking about all the time that's keeping you maybe limited, right? And how can you upgrade those questions to be more limitless? Let me give you an example. When you mentioned Will Smith, I help actors to speed read scripts, memorize their lines, focus better. We've talked about my X-Men story, in a previous episode with you. With Will Smith, I was spending the entire day with him in Toronto, and he was shooting from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. So
Which movie was it?
So this was Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
So it was winter time, and it was very cold out. But we found out his dominant question before we went to go shoot is how do I make this moment even more magical? Actually, before it was, how do I make this moment magical? And then we played with it, like, how can we make that even enhance that? Well, let's make it even more magical because it presumes it's already magical, right? And I was like, wow, that's a powerful question. And later that night, shooting, and everyone thinks that Hollywood is very glamorous, but you know this. It's just...
It's a grind.
Yeah, it is. It's just waiting all the time and just like wait, hurry up to just wait, right, around. And we're on set, and it's a night shoot, and it's tough. It's like 2:00 in the morning. His family from West Philly, you all know the song, is there, and we're outside, and they're not shooting. And I asked him, I was like, how do you get ready? Like, we're waiting here for hours for you to go on camera, and for the director to bring you back on, how do you get ready? He was like, Jim, I don't have to get ready, I stay ready. I'm like, whoa, it's good to be Will Smith, right? He's about determination. He does the work. And because I believe the life you live are the lessons you teach. The life you live are the lessons you teach others. It's not what you say, it's what you show, right? It's not what you promise, it's what you prove to other people. And so it was interesting because we're all cold out there watching these little monitors of what they're filming, and he starts to bring people blankets, and he starts to make hot chocolate for everybody and bring it to us, and he starts cracking jokes and telling stories. He was living his dominant question of how do I make this moment even more magical. I mean, it was beautiful. And so my thing for everybody here is be conscious of your thoughts, because thoughts are things, and what you ask for, you will receive. You know, for example, I introduced 3 questions in here that I think everyone should obsess about in order to take knowledge and turn it into real action. You know, one of the 7 lies that I talk about, and I lie when in mindset, I refer to a lie as an acronym. It stands for limited idea entertained. These are not truths. These are just ideas we're entertaining, you know, giving energy, but they're not necessarily true. Like, you know, that we use, you know, 10% of our brain. That's a lie. That intelligence is fixed. Like, you know, you take an IQ test when you're 8, and that's what your IQ is going to be when you're 88. That's absolutely false. So I debunked these lies, the BS, these belief systems, right? And going back to with Will Smith and asking these questions, it's like, what, again, reminder. And the reason I mention these names is so when next time you watch him on Instagram or watch his next, you know, movie, it reminds you of the lessons, because that's how memory works. Your memory works on reminders. Your memories works on triggers. You know, when you forget something and then somebody says, oh, it starts with a D, and you're like, oh, his name's David. You know what I mean? Or you forget something and then you hear a song like, oh, I had to pick up that pizza. You know what I mean? It's just that. So that's the reason why we tell these stories. But going back to the power of questions, there are 3 questions that I ask myself to take knowledge into power, because one of the lies is knowledge alone is power. And we know it's not. At best, it's potential power. It only becomes power when you use it. I have a shirt that says knowledge times action equals power. And so 3 questions to turn knowledge into power. Number 1, should be your dominant learning questions. Number 1, how can I use this? You know, if you read this book or you listened to this podcast and started asking yourself, how can I use this? How can I use this? How can I use this? You're going to come up with a lot of answers. There are a lot of pug dogs that are sitting in this book, that are sitting in this conversation, that are sitting in your life, right? So how can I use this? Number 2, the second question you want to ask often to take knowledge and turn it into real power so you can be limitless is, why must I use this? Why must I use this? Because here's the success formula. You could have things in your head, you know, a goal, a vision for your life, a plan in your head, but not act with your hands. You got to check in with the second H, which is your heart. Head, heart, hands. Go back to why. One of the blurbs in the back of the book is from Simon Sinek. Many people have seen his TED Talk. He has a great book called Start With Why. I recommend a lot of books because I'm a reading teacher. I think readers really are leaders today. And it's great to see on social media now how people are using, you know, more and more time to read, especially when they're working at home and they have to be at home and they're getting back to their reading lists. But ask your why. And so why must I use this? Because if there's no reason, you won't get the result. Reasons reap results. Reasons reap rewards. So find your why to use it. Otherwise you won't. Even when it's remembering names. If you don't have a reason to remember someone's name, you won't. Right? No one remembers everyone's name, but some people remember some people's names, and there's probably some why. You know, they're attracted to that person, or that person would be good for their business. So find your why. And then finally, the third question after, how can I use this? Why must I use this? Third question is, when will I use this? When will I use this? Going back to the most powerful productivity tool you have, which is your calendar. And we talked about, if it's on your calendar, it's on your schedule, it doesn't get done. How can I use this? Why must I use this? When will I use this? Those 3 questions will allow you to elevate and get to new levels of your learning and your life.
Remarkable. It's remarkable. Hey, if you like this video, make sure to check out this video right here to optimize your mindset and to achieve your goals faster.
So the moment you become conscious of that thought, you're no longer the thought. You're observing the thought, and you begin to objectify your subjective self. You start pulling out of the unconscious program, and consciousness, awareness is the first step to do that.